Hi everyone, this is Julie Martinez Hayes. I'm your professor for NOS 230. This is spring 2022. I'm making a very quick and kind of informal video to show you some of the quirks of the live VM labs. I have all this information in documentation in Blackboard, but folks are missing it. And I want to make sure you see this. Basically, I'm trying to save you a lot of frustration and save you time. I'm just going to open the first live VM lab. I rarely say the word virtual machine when there's a VM. I get very used to these acronyms, sorry. When we open the first live virtual machine lab, one of the things you'll notice is that the screen is in frames and you can't see much of the VM. Let me share my screen. There we go. All right, when you start an assignment, you might be prompted to replace one you had started earlier. And if you really messed up, you can replace it, but it won't matter because the grade from this assignment is not what we use. We use the grade from the Word document in Blackboard. Let me just open a fresh Blackboard so we don't see anybody's grades. One of the things I'm missing is that back in the live virtual machine lab, you would have been just sitting and waiting the whole time, waiting for your domain controller to open. There are 4 servers and 2 workstations in this list, basically in the center of the screen. The names are PLAB DC01, PLAB. The company that made these is called PracticeLabs, so PLAB or PLAB is the beginning of every computer name. PLAB. So it's PLAB DC01, PLAB DM01, PLAB DM02, PLAB SA01, and then there's a Windows. It says Windows 8.10 and Windows 10. Now, the PLAB is not the important part of the name. It's the last 4 characters, DC01. The DC stands for Domain Controller, DM01. DM is Domain Member. DM02 is the second domain member. SA01, SA stands for Standalone. So based on the name alone right here, I would think this has the server operating system installed on it, but it has not been joined to the domain. The real reason I want to show you this, the kind of get around these labs, is that folks are saying, why is my server screen so small? Well, there are settings, and you might have noticed that a second window popped up in the middle of when I was working, and it looks like I'm trying to connect to PLAB DC01. Let me show you how it popped up. It popped up based on settings that are above the lab instructions. So there's a frame in the center with the computer names giving you options such as power on, off, reboot, reset. To the left of that there are some lab instructions. I don't know the tab order. One at the top of the lab instructions, there are 5 icons. On the far right is one that says Access, Help, and Support. Second to the right says Access Your Settings, and it's the image of a gear. That's the one you want, the Access Your Settings. The middle one of the 5 is Access Your Reports. You don't have any reports yet. The second to the left is Access Your Exercise Content. And the far left says access your practice lab titles, which isn't very useful. The second one in you'll be dealing with often, which is the exercise content. These are your lab instructions with a next screen button at the bottom, and allows you to scroll through the content with the lab instructions. It goes next and previous. It's based on exercise numbers, and within an exercise it will have instructions. So exercise 1 will have task numbers, and then inside each task will have step numbers. So oftentimes if I say watch this particular setting, I want you to do a slightly different step here. Please rename it after your name, not what it tells you to name it. Those kinds of changes will be in the Word document that I provide in Blackboard. Okay. The settings, let me just go back to Blackboard to show you the Word document. In each week, since I opened Lab 1, I will go down to Week 1. Each week has a long list of instructions. The first 2 weeks are actually the most difficult. But underneath the link to the lab itself, and the live VM labs will be listed below lab simulations. There'll be a link to the live virtual machine lab with a blue Cengage icon, and the title might say Lab 1-1, Deploy and Manage Domain Controllers Part 1. Underneath that is a more detail that says Hands-on Live Virtual Machine Lab. Oftentimes I'll give you hints such as it is quicker not to power on all the servers that they tell you to power on simply because you don't need them yet. And I will give you more hints on the best way to approach this live VM lab right there. The next entry down is a Word document. It gives more specific information on the snips I want you to take. And that's how these labs are graded. You follow the instructions in MindTap, but then when it comes to the snips, you have a Word document here in Blackboard where I want you to paste the snips. It's basically just an answer sheet. So it will say NOS 230, Live VM Lab, Exercise 1, snip of PLAB DMO1 showing Active Directory users and computers with the domain controllers folder expanded to show 2 domain controllers. PLAB DMO1 must be listed in the domain controllers folder. So you're proving that you were able to join DMO1, upgrade it to be a domain controller, and that if I open the container that shows domain controllers, it will show both the one that we already had and the one you just created. Okay, that's what this Word document is. This is what I grade. That's an important part. Now, back in MindTap, we're going to go to the Settings icon, Access Your Settings, Gear. It has your name, time zone. In the second section down, it looks at the device. Now, when it's looking at a device, it's talking about the VMs themselves. There's an auto server login, and you can toggle that on or off. There are times in the instructions that say, well, turn off the auto server login. There's actually a way to turn off auto login individually on a per VM basis, which is a little bit easier. Let's the next one down, use Connect Device Client. That one I actually haven't had to use too much to connect to the device client. The device pop-ups is extremely useful. Device pop-ups means that your VM does not pop up on a tiny little screen to the right of your lab instructions, but pops up into an entirely new window. So you would use Alt-Tab to get to that other window. Full screen is just the option. Do you want it to pop up full screen or not? There's one more very useful one. The device links. You want device links to click directly to the VM that it's going to. Advanced accessibility is a little misleading in my eyes. Advanced accessibility, and I'll turn it off on mine. What it does, it extends your timer. Most of you with all the default settings will see auto log out 60 minutes, and below that you'll see power and reset devices, power on all your devices, and then log out of all devices. This actually doesn't close your lab. The two ways the lab will close are the X in the upper right corner of this frame, or if it times out, it just kicks you out of the lab and you've lost all your work. It does not save your work. So what you really want to do is either keep a very close eye on this clock, and every time you click on it, it bounces back to 60. All right, whatever it was, it goes to 60. Does not matter how many times you click on that. The other option is turn on the advanced accessibility, which makes your clock go away, but it doesn't give you unlimited time if you are not on the windows themselves. You have to be active in the lab for this timer to really not kick you out. If you start goofing off on social media, reading your email, start working on a different class, checking the horrible news, then it realizes that you're not active in the lab and it can kick you out. So be careful with this. You want to be aware that when you're in the lab, you're truly in the lab and working. Okay, so let me turn these off. Device pop-ups full screen. I can even close the lab completely. Since I've closed the lab, I actually still have, nope, I closed the server. I'm going to reopen a different lab. I'm opening live VM Lab 2-1. Obviously that Word document I opened no longer applies. If you hear water trickling in the background, I apologize. I'm doing a drip acclimation on a fish tank. I have to fill it slowly, but I have to keep the pump running. So it's a little noisier. Okay, my lab is opened. My domain controller powered on quickly. It asks if I want to start this lab over or go back to my previous version. I don't think that domain controller actually ever shut down fully. These VMs get reused between labs. You might notice if you build a user object in lab 2-1 and you very quickly start lab 2-2, that user object is still there. Okay, my clock is working automatically. I cannot see a different pop-up for DC01. Let me click on it. It should appear in the right side screen. Now, if you don't have two monitors to work with, or you just prefer to keep it all on one screen, these frames have the slide bar in the middle, so you can have the instructions take up a lot of space or take up almost no space and have a lot more screen dedicated to the virtual machine itself. You will have some, oftentimes you'll have errors as soon as you log in. It's either asking for a password or it says, I can't connect to you. The reason it cannot connect is that you are using a remote session with Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP. We covered that in NOS 130. So we might have to use the buttons on top of the VM. There's a VM bar with some buttons at the top. One that confirms I'm connected. The next one over is a key with a slash through it saying auto login to this device is turned off. This is an on-off switch. If I turn this key on, it should log me directly into the VM next time. There's a box with a little corner in it. That mouse over is switching from the RDP mode to console mode and back. So that's another binary toggle button. When your computer is doing automatic updates or it's loading things and it's not fully up and running yet, if you were sitting at the computer itself, you wouldn't be able to log on yet. This console option will show you that. The console option says things like, I'm in progress, I'm almost done. It gives a little more information. The other thing it does is lets you see the computer name and who is currently logged on. That's really important for some of your labs when you have to prove who is logged on. Especially when you're testing group policy and you have to prove that a certain user was able to log in and get a certain background. I'm in Firefox. Warning for Firefox users, you'll get double characters in these labs. You need to best use Chrome for these labs, so I actually won't be able to log in properly without no key. This is the button up at the top buttons next to the console view, console toggle button is the reconnect to device. And when you get an error, usually that error screen is due to the RDP protocol not being up before you tried to connect to the VM. All you have to do is hit this the button near the top. This is third from the right. The mouse over text is reconnect to device. And all it does is resubmit the request. And it gets you in. So when you get any errors, oftentimes you'll get a blue screen that shows a big ugly error and 6 possible things to do to fix it. This button with the you think of that as an electric sign. It's a lightning bolt. The lightning bolt button that says reconnect to device, that's the first thing you do, and that will fix 90% of your issues. Right there. Okay, so those are the default options. I've used 5 minutes of our lab time. There we go. I click the clock and I'm back up to 60 minutes. You would then scroll through these instructions. Be careful to actually read them, not just click on them. You want to learn the explanation because there is a lot of not just how, but why. Why would you do it this way? What happens if you don't do it this particular way? There's a lot of explanation, so reading this makes doing these labs a fairly slow process. It also provides PowerShell, and you can copy and paste, but not all the characters are correct, especially quote marks, because an ASCII quote mark and a document quote mark are different. You notice, probably learned that in Linux or NOS 110, that quote marks can be straight up and down, or they can be slanted at an angle. So you're better off typing text directly into PowerShell to make sure you get the correct characters. It walks you through the click-by-click instructions, but also midway through we'll ask questions. So there will be questions in the middle of this lab asking of you what happened, what did you do here, what was the response, what did the error message say, etc. The answers to those questions are not how this lab is graded. Okay, try to do your best. You have unlimited tries to do these labs, but at that one single submission of the Word document is the primary grade here. You can hit next and get through the different exercises. There are several exercises in this particular lab. At the end of the lab, there are more questions. These questions are really frustrating. The questions at the end of the live VM labs oftentimes are not related to the work you just did. They are not graded properly. In fact, the snips that it asks you to take during the live VM lab, there are instructions built in to take a screenshot or hit the screenshot button, which is in the lab instructions. It doesn't grade those properly either, which is why I don't use it. But I like the lab and I like the exercise, and I really like the fact that this virtual machine has no bumpers. There's nothing closed. It can be a virtual machine lab on group policy, and we can spend the whole time playing with DHCP servers and looking at how IP addresses are dished out. So you get questions at the end of the live VM labs that are not on your work, often not in the chapter, not graded correctly, and they don't. This is the main reason why I don't take these labs, because these questions often they're not helpful to you. They're distracting, and they're worth 20 points each. So even if you were to get just one wrong and did the lab part perfectly, it would still take off 20 points off your entire lab grade if we went with the MindTap grading. So we don't use MindTap grading for the live virtual machine labs. We do use the MindTap grading for the simulation labs. So you have to be more patient with those, and there are questions at the end of those labs as well. They're just more relevant to the task. Please read the chapter before you do the lab simulations. Okay, I think I've covered all or most of the quirks of these virtual machines. If I think of any more, I'll get back to you. The secret is really in the gear icon that says access your settings. That's on the left frame and to the left of your virtual machines and above the lab instructions. I hope this helps. If you need anything else, please let me know. Bye.